Hey guys, I'm back here with my 2002 Nissan Maxima. What's going on today, actually I noticed this a few days ago because the carpet in there was wet. So it kind of made me think back on my Jeep videos and what was going on with that and why the passenger side was wet. Thankfully it looks like it's not what I originally thought, so it's not the heater core in there. But then I also noticed that my fluid was getting drained extremely fast. So this reservoir, as you can tell here, if I screw this on too much, this cap is broken and this is cracked back here. Look, it's all brittle and falling apart. So what I'll be showing you guys how to do is how to replace this coolant container here. This goes over here to the radiator, and then from the radiator it goes into the engine. So I started taking a look at the radiator, and as you can see there, it's all wet right there. So I kept on tracing it, and it looks like my radiator is cracked somewhere and it's leaking. So I'll also be showing you guys how to replace the radiator in this car as well as that little reservoir. So what you're going to need for this, you might need one of these. You probably won't, because you don't really need to lift the car up at all for this repair, but you do need a new radiator. So there's the radiator. I highly suggest getting a bucket so you can empty out your coolant and then reuse it. This, some of you guys may not need it, but Amazon suggested it, so I figured I may as well just replace the coolant hose. And then also the bushings on top here. So if you see these little rubber bushings, as you can tell, this one is all messed up. This should be in the center. It shouldn't be wiggling around at all. So I'll be replacing these bushings as well. So there's that. And I also suggest that you get some coolant so you can fill up the reservoir and fill up the radiator when you're done, if it still needs some, because you probably lost some fluid if this same thing happened to you. And then obviously a good ratchet and wrench set. You will also want to have some pliers for this job, because it's going to require to take off clamps. So these are very good for taking off the clamps. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started here. We'll replace this reservoir first because it's just a lot easier to do first. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Before you begin with this repair, I highly suggest that you remove the negative battery terminal, just so you don't damage any electronics, short anything out while you're doing this repair. So just do that and set it aside. Alright, so first off, remove this hose, or this little clamp from this hose, and just pull this off. The new reservoir comes with a hose, and all the items over there that I'm using will be listed in the video's description, so you can go and purchase them on Amazon and then get right to work here. So take this little hose off, and then there's a bolt right there and a bolt right there that we need to take off. Alright, so in order to do this, I suggest using a 10mm socket with an extender so you can go all the way back there. And then just take off that bolt back there. Take the one up top as well. They both should be 10mm bolts. Alright, now that you've taken those two bolts out, this should be loose, and then you can just take it out like so. If you have any liquid in here, I would suggest using your bucket right now to empty this out. Although mine looks pretty dirty in there, so I don't think I'm going to reuse my liquid in here. Alright, so see these clamps on the old reservoir? The new one, it looks like it doesn't have one. So I took one off of the old one and slipped it into the new one's tube here, and I'll just slide it back there just to secure it. Next, I would suggest cleaning this area a little bit, just so there's no water or anything like that. It might cause rust later on. So just clean that area a little bit, and then you can go ahead and put the new reservoir in here. Also, down there, notice that little piece of plastic? That needs to slide into that hole. Otherwise, this won't fit properly. So make sure you get that in that tiny hole right down there. And then this should line up with the two holes. Alright, so that's it for this little reservoir. Make sure this hose goes through here so that it's routed like that, and then the other end, you can put it on these clamps, but just don't put it back on the radiator yet. So put it there and then just set it aside. This way we can get to the radiator. Now we'll remove this cap, and it looks like there is fluid in there. So we need to drain the radiator out so we can get it taken out. Alright, so to drain the radiator, you might need to lift up the car. You really don't have to, but it's just easier for me here since I'm filming. You'll need your bucket to catch the fluid, and just on this side of the car here, you need to get under it slightly. And right there, right where this main radiator hose comes out, you will see this little plug, and all you need is a Phillips screwdriver. So position the bucket right under it and then unscrew it. So unscrew it slowly. And you should actually see a lot more liquid. There we go. So just empty that into your bucket. Once it's empty, we'll unscrew the radiator and get it taken out. Alright, so while that's draining down there, we can take some bolts out here. So we have some fake screws here, which we can take out easily with this screwdriver. So this is just a plastic screw. I'll just put it up there on the engine. And basically we just need to move this little plastic piece of the air intake out of the way so we can lift the radiator out. So unscrew these two screws here and just get this moved out of the way. Alright, once you have that removed, we need to take these little nuts off. But before you do so, if you've never done this before, you might want to get some WD-40 and put it on these and just let it sit for a few minutes, just so you don't break these off, because I've seen other people do this repair and break these nuts or break the bolts off completely. Alright, so after you've waited a few minutes for the oil to dig in and do its job, go ahead and remove these bolts. These should be 10 millimeter nuts as well. So there's one, and actually I'll set these down here, and then you can remove the whole assembly, move it over here and then do the other one. And here we'll just go ahead and get the bushings done right now. So just go ahead and push these out. Basically just push them out with your finger. I might need 2 hands to do this, but you get the point. Just push these out. Oh, there we go. And then just put these in with this little nozzle going down. Alright, so there's the new bushings installed. There's the old ones that are all cracked and worn out. Let's go ahead and get back to the radiator. Next we need to take the wire harness off. So you will see these little clips all around the radiator. If you use needle nose pliers like this, you can actually grab onto these and squeeze them down so that you can pull them out without breaking them. So get all of those out, and also disconnect the wire harness down here. So there should be a little clip that you have to press down, and then you just pull the connector up. I'm having kind of a hard time here, so I might need 2 hands, but you get the point. Just get these taken out. Be careful not to damage them. If you do damage them, you can probably use zip ties to tie it back up to the fan. Alright, so here is the wire harness all taken out. Clips are mostly okay. So there's the plug over there. There's a plug right here. And it looks like coolant actually got in there, and that's why I couldn't start my car this morning. So it looks like the coolant shorted out my battery, which is why I've been having issues with the battery more than likely. So get that taken out, the wire harness, and then disconnect this hose here from the engine. So get your pliers here, clamp these down, and then get that out. Alright, so that one was on a bit tight. So you can always remove the one on the radiator instead. There's also another hose down there by the drain plug. Most people suggest that you take it off right here from the actual engine, but to me that looks like a mess, so I'm going to try and take it off down there on the radiator. So here is that clamp right there. So take that off, and we should be able to get that off a lot easier than taking it off from the engine. Alright, so this part can be kind of difficult. I tried to take the hose off down there, but putting it back in place would be kind of a pain. So I started doing this. I took the clamp off here, and then I've been using a screwdriver here to get this out. Now, I can do this because I bought a replacement hose there that I can use, but if you don't have a replacement hose, then be very careful if you do this with a screwdriver, because you might damage that hose. Alright, so there, as you can tell, after a few minutes of using my screwdriver here to pry under the hose, I was able to get it off, and now we should be able to just pull this out. Make sure all the hoses and everything are unclamped, and then just pull this up. So that's just grabbing it like right here. It looks like there's actually handles right here and right here, and then just pull this out. Let me do that right now. So this is what you will end up with. As you can tell, the radiator is completely out, and now it's over here. So what we need to do now is get these fans and transfer them to the new radiator. So to take these fans off, undo these bolts up here at the top. These are also 10 millimeter bolts. So there's one right there and one right there. Once you have undone those 2 bolts, you should be able to just pull on this and the whole fan assembly will come off the radiator, and then just go ahead and get your new radiator out. Alright, so there's your old radiator. Here's the new radiator, and just go ahead and set this down like that. Make sure it catches on these tabs here. Then just bolt the 2 bolts back in place. Now what I would suggest doing at this point is transferring all of these over to the new hose if you bought a new one. Also, if you bought a new one, the new one is going to be slightly longer than the old one, so that may help you out. Alright, so once you've transferred all the stuff from your old alternator here, basically just the fan assembly, to the new alternator, and then clamped the hose back on and transferred all the stuff from your old hose, if you bought a new one like I did, then you can go ahead and pick this up and put it back in the car. Now this part might be a bit tedious. Be careful with the radiator, you don't want to bend any of the fins in there, but basically lower it in. You'll want to put this side in first, so it goes down and it goes under these hoses and stuff over here, and then you should be able to lower it. These pins right here line up down there, so make sure those are in place, and then you should be okay to hook up this hose. But let me go ahead and lower this in place. This might be a bit tedious, so be patient with it. Alright, so there's the hose. I just need to clamp it, and then here's the radiator, and I noticed these things at the bottom. So when you put in your new radiator down here, make sure those rubber things are in there as well. Otherwise, you're just gonna end up with another cracked radiator. So I'm gonna put this one here on the other side. As you could tell right there, that one doesn't have it. Alright, so there's that hose put back in place, and this is actually what I used to get that in there, so that I could make this bigger or smaller, whatever I needed it for. But there's that. The hoses down there are clamped back in place. Some of these hoses had to be moved around, but as long as there's no kinks or anything like that, then they should be okay. Next, put this hose back on, and as well use this to clamp onto both of these sides. So basically grab them like that, clamp them, and then you can move this back and forth. This one over here is the most difficult one, so be patient with that one. Once you have that done, those hoses reattached, then get the wire harness and stick it back in place, plug the fans in, and then we can put these back in place here. So just grab these, make sure the top of the radiator goes through the hole there, and then just put the nut in there. So simple as that. Put those 2 10mm nuts back in place. After you have put these back in place, don't forget this that goes from the reservoir in here. So plug that in until it's snug there at the end, then use the clamps to secure that in place. Once that's done, make sure to secure the hose to the other hoses so they're out of the way, and put that in there so it doesn't get caught on anything. Turn the clamp that way so it doesn't get hit by anything. And then all we need to do now is refill the reservoir with your coolant. So down there you'll see indicators for the max and minimum. So fill it up to the max, and then also fill it up in here with your coolant. You may need to burp your car later on, so just park it uphill or something and take the cap off to let the air out. Make sure the engine's not extremely hot when you do this, or simply lift it like this so it's at an angle, and that way the air can come out, and that way you won't have any air bubbles in the cooling system. So get the cap from your old radiator, fill this up to the top, and this is what I suggest using. Link will be down in the description. But yeah, fill the radiator up to the top and fill the reservoir up to max. And put this back on, and then all we need to do is set this back in place here. So reconnect it to your air intake. So there's the air intake. Now we'll just connect the negative battery terminal here. Now that we're done with the work. And make sure not to touch the other end like that. This is why rubber gloves come in handy. And it looks like that is pretty much it. So we're done. And let me lower the car. So that's it. And that's my tutorial on how to replace your coolant reservoir and your radiator on a 2002 Nissan Maxima. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, favorite, or share the video. Consider subscribing as well for future tutorials such as this one. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.